As is customary, we will begin with opening statements. 5 weeks ago, because of the work of Director Patel, we learned that the former chair of the House Intelligence Committee and current United States Senator leaked classified information. We learned this because a whistleblower came forward. A whistleblower with 23 years' experience in the intelligence community, a Democrat staffer on the committee, said this: they were pressured to leak classified information, which sort of raises the obvious question. Why would the head of the Intelligence Committee, the chair of that committee, who's supposed to be guarding our secrets, why would he be encouraging the leaking of classified information? Whistleblower told us that answer as well. The leaked information was supposed to be used, the leaked information, false information, was going to be used to indict President Trump. Now, the former chairman wasn't the only person leaking information. Jim Comey was also sharing things he wasn't supposed to share. Again, don't take my word for it. The Inspector General told us this. In his report, he said, quote, James Comey violated FBI policy by disclosing classified information. And what was Comey's motive? Same as the senator from California: to sabotage and undermine President Trump's first term. And we know that Mr. Comey's not been shy about what his objective was. In fact, 4 months ago, he told us. Remember this? 8647. Jim Comey told us just 4 months ago. Now, how'd they do it? How did the former chair of the Intel community, the former FBI director, and others in our government attempt to undermine President Trump's first term?
This hearing revisits one of the most contested chapters in recent American political history: the intelligence community's assessment of Russian interference in the 2016 election and the subsequent investigations that followed. Representative Jim Jordan is raising allegations tied to whistleblower testimony and internal intelligence communications, pointing toward actions involving Senator Adam Schiff, former FBI Director James Comey, former CIA Director John Brennan, and former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper. At the center of the claims are two major allegations. First, that classified information may have been leaked or encouraged to be leaked for political purposes. Second, that intelligence assessments in late 2016 were modified or framed in a way that supported a predetermined narrative regarding Russian election interference. These are serious accusations. Intelligence processes operate under strict legal standards, especially when dealing with classified material and election-related analysis. Whistleblower protections also play a critical role in uncovering misconduct, but claims made in hearings must ultimately be supported by documented findings, not just political assertions. It is important to remember that multiple investigations over several years have already examined aspects of the Russia inquiry. The Department of Justice Inspector General issued reports detailing procedural errors and policy violations in certain surveillance applications. At the same time, bipartisan findings from the Senate Intelligence Committee reaffirmed that Russia conducted influence operations aimed at the 2016 election. This hearing attempts to reframe that historical record by highlighting internal emails, whistleblower claims, and intelligence disagreements. The larger institutional question becomes whether these communications demonstrate coordinated political misconduct, or whether they reflect high-pressure interagency collaboration during a national security crisis. Let's examine the claims in detail and separate documented findings from interpretive conclusions.
7 weeks ago, because of the good work of the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, we learned from another whistleblower, a second whistleblower, that in the closing days of the Obama administration, the intelligence community assessment was changed. On December 5th, 2016, they had one assessment. That assessment said Russia did not impact the election vote count. There was a meeting at the White House on December 9th, 2016, where it was decided, no, we're not going to have that. We're going to come up with a new one. And the new one said Russia was trying to influence election and did influence election, which just wasn't accurate. And that new one is published on January 6, 2017. Let's just show you a few things that took place. I want to show you first this email from Admiral Rogers, the head of the NSA. You can see it was December 22nd. It says to Jim, John, and Jim Clapper, John Brennan, Jim Comey. And he says, I asked my team if they've had sufficient access to the underlying intelligence, sufficient time to review that intelligence. On both points, my team raised concern. Further states, my folks aren't fully comfortable. A few hours later, there's an email back to Admiral Rogers. This one is from Jim Clapper, and it says this: "It is essential that we be on the same page and all of us are supportive of the report in the highest tradition of, that's our story and we're sticking to it. We may have to compromise on our normal modalities. This is one project that has to be a team sport. That's our story and we're sticking to it. Compromise on normal modalities, that's a fancy way of saying, that's the government speak for we're going to have to change the rules. In fact, we're not going to follow our own rules." And that's exactly what they did, to get the objective they wanted, to undermine President Trump.
Representative Jordan places significant emphasis on internal communications, particularly emails referencing the need for officials to be on the same page and describing the intelligence assessment process as a team sport. Critics interpret that language as evidence of coordinated messaging rather than independent analysis. However, intelligence community assessments are, by design, collaborative documents. The CIA, NSA, FBI, and other agencies often draft joint findings. Analysts may initially disagree on conclusions, confidence levels, or evidentiary thresholds. Drafts are revised, language is negotiated, and consensus statements are constructed before publication. The December 2016 Intelligence Community Assessment ultimately concluded that Russia interfered in the election through influence operations, including social media campaigns and hacking activities. It did not conclude that vote totals were altered. That distinction has been affirmed repeatedly in official reports. The allegation raised here is that the assessment shifted from a narrower finding to a broader political framing following internal White House discussions in December 2016. Whether that shift represents manipulation or legitimate analytic evolution depends on documentation, not inference. Additionally, Inspector General findings regarding James Comey did conclude that he violated FBI policy in retaining and sharing certain memos. However, the Inspector General did not conclude that the Russia investigation itself was fabricated or illegitimate. Instead, the report focused on adherence to FBI procedural standards. The Steele dossier, referenced in the hearing, was indeed controversial. Subsequent reviews criticized aspects of its use in FISA warrant applications. Yet bipartisan Senate findings later confirmed that Russia did conduct interference operations independent of the dossier's claims. So the analytical challenge is this: do procedural violations or internal disagreements invalidate broader intelligence conclusions? Or do they reflect flawed but not fabricated investigative processes? Congressional hearings often highlight the most contentious elements of past investigations. But establishing intent, particularly criminal or political intent, requires legal findings beyond rhetorical framing. This hearing ultimately speaks to a deeper issue than individual emails or intelligence drafts. It touches on public trust in democratic institutions, trust in intelligence agencies, trust in congressional oversight, and trust in the integrity of presidential transitions. For supporters of Representative Jordan's argument, these disclosures suggest coordinated efforts to shape public perception and undermine a newly elected president. For defenders of the intelligence community, the same events represent urgent responses to credible foreign interference threats during a volatile period. It is also important to consider that congressional oversight is designed precisely for moments like this. Lawmakers have the authority, and responsibility, to question intelligence procedures, examine whistleblower claims, and request internal documentation. But ultimate accountability requires documented evidence, legal review, and, where appropriate, prosecutorial action. Multiple prior investigations, including Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report and the bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee review, concluded that Russia interfered in the 2016 election through influence operations. However, they did not establish a criminal conspiracy between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. That nuance is often lost in political debate. The question now is whether new whistleblower claims materially alter the established record, or whether they reinterpret it through a different political lens. In democratic systems, transparency strengthens institutions, but politicization can weaken them. Oversight must be rigorous, but conclusions must be evidence-based. So we'll leave you with this. Do these newly referenced communications reveal coordinated misconduct? Or do they reflect contested judgments made during a high-stakes intelligence review? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. If you value balanced, fact-driven analysis of congressional hearings, intelligence oversight, and institutional accountability, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay informed as these developments continue to unfold.